the bowels of Netflix, where your fearless co-hosts Isaac and Larry force each other to watch the worst pieces of shit on Netflix. We will go over every bad edit, all the broken dialogue, all the wooden acting, and laugh along the way, because this is the bowels of Netflix! Alright, and welcome to a bonus adventure in the colon. I'm Isaac, and with me as always is my fearless co-host Larry. How are you doing this week, Larry?
Do you know that Huey Lewis song, Working for a Living?
No, actually.
Okay, I don't really either. I just know the name, but I feel it's appropriate. We should play that underneath it. I've never heard the song before. I just know it's a song that exists by Huey Lewis called Working for a Living.
Yeah, well, we work too hard and we play too hard, Larry, I would say.
Yeah, both of those things are true. If my fucking expanding waistline has anything to say about that, yeah, I think both of those statements are true.
Yeah, if my raw and calloused penis has anything to say about it, I would also agree.
It's like a piece of old fruit leather.
And yeah, let me confirm, it's not from fucking hot babes. It's from just smashing it in the couch and grinding until I cum buckets.
Cum Buckets is my favorite character from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. That's like one of his uncles, right?
No, I think he was the lead Oompa Loompa.
This Buckets. Is my Uncle Cum! Cum Buckets! That's lead Oompa Loompa. That's even better. Oh, that says some weird things about Willy, though, doesn't it? I mean, Willy...
Would they come orange or come green?
That's a great question. I don't know.
What do you get if you mix orange and green? Just brown? I feel like it's brown.
I think if it's any color you don't immediately know the combination to, it just makes brown.
Now, Larry, I've been coming brown. Should I see my doctor?
No, that's poop. What color's your poop?
White.
Well, you're all mixed up. Did you get, like, kicked by a mule in the head when you were a child? Or, like, yesterday?
No, not when I was a child, but yeah, last week.
It might have something to do with it.
I was trying to tickle the scrotum of a mule, and goddamn, I got kicked in the head.
Boy, I want that to be on a headstone. Here lies Isaac. He tried to tickle the scrotum of a mule.
That's how he went out. The way he lived. Scrotum tickling till he died.
Since we're doing a fucking side episode, should we just keep doing shtick until we run out?
Yeah, probably. We'll title the episode Shtick Until We Run Out.
I feel like we would stop being funny within 5 minutes, but also not stop doing it.
We might have stopped being funny a minute ago.
That sounds about right, actually. Yeah. Hi, welcome to the Bells of Side Flicks.
We are the Bells of Side Flicks, yeah. Where we usually cover a movie every week that's a terrible movie that one of us makes the other watch. This week, our lives were a little crazy.
Yeah, I worked a lot of fucking overtime, and every time I sat down to do the review for this movie, air quotes, I said, I can't fucking do this. I'm not doing it. And then all of a sudden, now it's Sunday, and it's still not done.
Yeah. And to be fair, it really is hard to sit down, like especially when you're working a 9 to 5, to sit down and review a bad movie.
Honestly, like my usual time for a review is between 3 and 4 hours. And that's not counting the first time I've watched it, which in fairness, I'm not taking notes the first time, so that's a little more loose, but still. It's a lot more time than you'd think.
But yeah, like after you put in an 8-hour workday, like you get home, you clean yourself, you take your dog for a walk, you make yourself dinner, and you're like, oh shit, I need to go to bed by 11 if I'm going to have enough sleep to deal with tomorrow. It's like, oh, do I want to fill this, the only free time I have today with watching a terrible movie and taking notes about it? It's hard work. It really is.
It really does help fuel the hate a little more because I'm just irritated.
Oh, yeah.
I come in irritated at like, well, there's my free time for a night. And yeah, so imagine now you're working 9 or 10 hour days and then have to do this every day. And yeah, so it just didn't happen. But we're men of the people and we wanted to give you something. So we're going to do something that required a lot less work.
Yeah, we are going to deliver our planned episode. I don't even know what episode it is. 70-something next week. Next Sunday. We're coming out with our full episode. Right now, we're still hitting you up on Sunday with some content because we don't want to leave you hanging. But we're doing a bonus adventure in the colon. We're talking about what we actually like. And each of us is going to go over a TV show that we've watched that the other one hasn't seen and talk about why it's pretty goddamn good.
So still, it's the same sort of thing we normally do. We're just flipping the script a little bit, and it's something good.
Yeah, which we haven't really done before, but I think I had a lot of fun typing some of this stuff out, and yeah, I think that might be something in our future where we talk about things that we like.
Yeah. I didn't intend. I didn't want to take any notes because the show I picked is pretty. I know it pretty well. But I thought I'll watch the first couple of episodes, the first 2 or 3, just to get myself back in the mindset. And before I know it, I had watched through half of season 2.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's obviously a good show because it sucked you in. So what do you got for me, Larry?
Well,
what show should I be watching?
So it's a show we've definitely talked about on this podcast before that I've found I really enjoyed. Big Mouth. And we've talked about it a lot lately, with especially with Maya Rudolph, who came up.
Oh, okay, right. She's
reason.
the SNL alum.
Yes.
And yeah, she showed up in some movie or other.
This show is full of SNL alum, which I didn't know. Like, I knew a lot of these names kind of on the periphery of my mind, but when I kind of was looking more into it, I learned a lot more about it than I'd known before. But anyway, the premise of Big Mouth, for those of you who may not know, it's a Netflix original. And it came out, I believe, in 2017. Yeah, 2017. It's just basically about a group of teenagers in middle school. It's sort of the overall premise, but it's a lot more than that. That's just kind of the main setting. It's created by Nick Kroll and Andrew Goldberg, as well as Mark Levin and Jennifer Flackett.
Oh, mostly... Nick Kroll. He was in The League, wasn't he? And he's got a podcast.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
Okay.
I didn't know he had a podcast, because I know you love The League. I think you showed me a little bit of it.
I watched a couple seasons of it and then sort of fell out of it, but it was very good when I watched it. I should watch it. Yeah,
because I know it through you. Because I didn't know he was in it, because I was looking them up. Because mostly, I mean, it's created by those 4, but mostly it's about Andrew Goldberg and Nick Kroll's experience growing up, because they were friends. Andrew Goldberg doesn't really... I think he was like a Family Guy writer. I think you and I briefly wrote for Family Guy without even knowing it, because they've had every writer under the sun. But he doesn't really have a career. Nick Kroll has had a longer career with a lot of very different stuff. But it's mostly about them growing up, and in fact, the 2, I'm going to say main characters are named Nick and Andrew after those 2.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So yeah, it basically follows. There's a lot of things happen in a lot of seasons. I don't want to spoil anything, obviously. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that happens in the first season, just because there's 4 seasons out now. It's been renewed for 6. So, there'll be a couple, not so much spoilers, but things that happen in like the first 4 or 5 episodes.
Right, sure. And yeah, just in general, and with what I'm going to talk about later, like if you really don't want any spoilers at all, this episode's probably not for you. If you can deal with some mild spoilers... go ahead.
I'm going to try, because I have no notes. I'm going purely from memory when I know the show. I'm going to try, and I'll notify when I'm going to talk about things that might be a little spoilers just for season 1, but I'll try and keep it free. I'll try and keep it loose up until then. So it's, there's no such thing as spoiling episode 1 of a show. That's just how life goes.
Right, yeah.
So this show, most of the main characters of the show are middle schoolers. Like I said, the 2 main characters are Nick and Andrew. Andrew is Jewish. It's one of his main traits, and he's like very stereotypically young Jewish.
Okay.
And his best friend is Nick, who is very small, and he has a very big mouth, which doesn't really... It's weird the show is called Big Mouth, because it doesn't really like come up much, but it's like kind of the first big storyline that goes across a couple episodes is that he and one of their other friends, Jesse... who's like the main female lead, sort of. That's the thing too. As the show goes on, all of the side characters sort of become main characters. Like the first season kind of sticks to the main 4, which we'll get to the 4th in a second. And then as it goes along, the other characters who are sort of side characters become more important and more like they get their own storylines that aren't so much tied to the same 4. So imagine a show like Seinfeld, and these 4 characters are a lot like Seinfeld, actually, which is very interesting for some of the stuff we've been talking about lately.
I wonder how much that's purposeful.
They have us in season 1, in I don't know which episode. One of the episodes they have a scene in Tom's restaurant, where they even play the Seinfeld themes, and the 4 main characters play their roles in Seinfeld. Like, yeah. The wacky one is named Jay, and his whole thing is that I believe he is Armenian American. I think he's Armenian. And his dad is a really scummy divorce lawyer, and his whole thing is that he is like obsessed with jerking off and sex, but like to the point where he fucks his pillows. By the way, this is an animated show. I should have started with that. I got way off into the plot right away because I'm excited to talk about some stuff. This is an animated show, and when I first saw this, I dismissed it immediately because just like I've kind of seen enough adult animation to last me a lifetime, which is also what I said about BoJack Horseman, and that show literally changed my life and stopped me from killing myself. So I really should learn that I shouldn't judge a book by its cover. But like
animation really can be good.
Yeah, and it can be really hit or miss too.
For sure. And
also, like, I didn't even talk about the Hormone Monsters, but that's kind of that's usually what's on the label. So it's just, a show about, like, two monsters, and the trailers are full of naughty words and kids talking about sex, and I'm like, ugh, whatever. But somebody else turned me onto it and showed me an episode, and I kind of stuck with it, and I really don't regret it, because it's really good. And I know, the reason I chose it for this specifically is I know you will love it, Isaac. But anywho, yes. So the four main characters, like I said, we have Nick and Andrew and Jesse and Jay, and they play Jerry, Kramer, Elaine, Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer respectively. And
interesting.
They really like lampshade that early on too, where they're like having a scene where they're all talking about it, and it's like they're doing the voices, and it's very much like they have the same sort of interactions, and they have the same sort of relationship to each other as a group, which we've talked about that before, but like the Seinfeld formula really works in a lot of ways. And like Seinfeld works is just like a show of narcissists that never really win. And this isn't that, but it's a fun take because you can see like the same sort of characters reflected in the cast of Big Mouth, but you can see like how Nick has the sort of Jerry Seinfeld vibe, and his whole goal, he wants to be a famous funny person. He doesn't want to be a comedian, but he wants to be like famous for being funny. And Andrew is very neurotic, much like George. So like he's very you can start, and like his parents are incredibly neurotic, and you just start to see how like where a lot of those parallels came from. But it's interesting too because they also base it on things that happen in their real lives. So the first, go ahead, I'm sorry.
This is really fascinating because the show I'm talking about, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, is like linked very directly to another show where there's like a lot of cross characterizations. So it's just really funny that both of these shows that we really like have sort of that thing in common where they're like kind of tied to another show. So I'll get into that more later, but I just wanted to mention that because that's pretty cool.
That is interesting, yeah. And it's obviously you and I are huge Seinfeld fans, so that is like a big selling point to me, is that like, okay, they're definitely drawing on that same sort of experience. But anyway, to get back to what I was saying that started this, because this is why I take notes, because I go on tangents. So as the show goes on, like the side cast starts to get just as important as those four.
Oh, okay.
The main story still focus on them, but like, there's one, the school has a sort of stereotypical gay character named Matthew, and he becomes almost as important as the rest of the cast, as it like starting in basically season 2. And there's other there's Andrew's love interest Missy becomes important very quickly too. And it's like it does a great job of evolving those characters, and it does a good job too, because a lot of times I think with most television shows, but especially animated shows, it takes a while for them to come into their own. They have to like get their feet. BoJack kind of has this problem. The first half of season 1 of BoJack, the first season of BoJack, it's not quite the same as the rest of the show.
No, it doesn't have quite the right spice. Like it's still good, it's still enjoyable, but like it hasn't hit its stride.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I'll refer back to BoJack always as the gold standard for animated television shows, because I genuinely think it's one of the best shows ever made.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree.
Hands down, it's like it's changed the life of me and a lot of people I know immensely. And it's the things that it's done.
Its handling of mental health is like jaw on the floor. Like, how are you this honest and like communicative of what it's actually like to deal with these problems, but at the same time you're still producing funny content. it's still
right, and
hilarious.
it's engaging. It's not preachy or it's not like David Lynchian weird. It's engaging, realistic content about a fucking horseman. And one day we will have an episode where we fucking spend 4 hours talking about BoJack.
Oh yeah,
and
that's gonna happen.
That's gonna require a lot of time. But anyway, that's what I'm gonna use as my baseline. So the nice thing I thought about Big Mouth too, and I just, like I said, I rewatched this again, is I think it takes 2 episodes to hit its stride. The first episode and even the second episode are a little bit like, okay, knowing that and the rest of the show, I can tell there's like, I think it was a little bit shaky to get a start, but then once they do, it runs.
That's still fast after 2 episodes. Seinfeld itself didn't really hit its stride until season 3. Like season 1 and season 2 are kind of shaky. Like there's good stuff here and there, but like it wasn't really like on board until season 3.
That's the case for a lot of shows too,
yes.
And it's interesting too because you see it within the season, where like because I feel like even the delivery and some of like the stories are all fine. It's sort of like the interactions and the lines and the readings. Like I feel like the first 2 episodes they kind of get it established, and that it's not quite. I don't know. I could just tell the difference between that little section and the rest of the show as a whole. Of like, okay, they're still kind of getting their sea legs here. So it was impressive to me they got it in one season, especially when it's Netflix and that season dropped as one entity. It wasn't week to week.
This is true. And I think a lot of that is like interpersonal relationships. Because like I know the first time we met each other, I had asked you if you would rather blow Brett Favre or our manager Jeff. So we started off on like a comedy footprint. But we didn't really mesh until like 2 or 3 years after that. When like it took a while for us to become really good friends and really get each other. And I think like once people start working together on a show as writers or as voice actors or as animators or whatever is happening, like it takes time to start meshing with the people you're working with and becoming friends and really working together really well.
Yeah.
So that's why season 1, season 2 of any show is always going to be probably not as good as season 3 or season 4. And season 5, season 6 is when you're like, oh fuck, I've been spending too much time with this person. I hate them. Fuck. Oh my god.
Yeah. That's not always the case, but oftentimes it is. Yeah. There's usually a period. There's like oftentimes I find it shows the middle tends to be the best. Not always.
Yes.
But fucking Orange is the New Black just went totally downhill basically after season 2.
But with Simpsons, like, seasons 4 through 7 are probably the golden age. The beginning's great in a lot of ways, not the best in some ways, and, after a certain point it kind of trails off. But it's sort of interesting. I'm wondering how much that is the basis of interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, I've talked about it before with with Harmontown and Dan Harmon, who creates Rick and Morty, among other things.
Right.
But that is like, it's really interesting and fascinating to hear him talk about like TV writing because he's very candid, frequently drunk, and like very intelligent. Sometimes to the point where it ruins his life. And like it's interesting to hear about how that process for writing TV comes across, and it'd be really and it's same thing with movies. Like I'd love to be just like a fly on the wall in like a writer's room and see what it's actually like day to day to write a show like this. Because I feel like the ultimate goal for me in this podcast, as I'm kind of thinking of it, is that I want us to write a movie and try and get it made. I don't know. That's years and years and years down the line, but I kind of would love to write a movie.
I also have that stupid goal, that stupid, unrealistic, but goddamn, I dream about it goal. Like, I want to write a movie. I really do.
We need to do that for sure. But anyway,
I feel like if we combine our forces,
I think we can do it. We're both like good to great writers in between there.
Yes,
and
we have
I think
natural
we can definitely
talent,
pull that off.
And I think we have the ability to keep each other in check without pissing each other off.
Oh, definitely.
Where you could tell me I'm the dumbest motherfucker for X idea, and I'd be like, all right, you're right. And vice versa.
You've known me now for a pretty long time. Of all the human beings I met, you are one of, like, maybe 3 human beings on the planet I've never been legitimately angry at. Like,
well.
I could say that for... I have never... thought, oh God, Isaac's such an asshole. Now with the movies sometimes, but I mean, that's sort of like, I can't really be mad because I'm agreeing to do it. I'm agreeing to be on the show. But like, I have never thought of you and thought you were an asshole.
Did you know I came in your coffee cups?
Well, I may have to go back and re-examine some things. So yeah, I think we could definitely. I think us writing a movie is in the works one day, way down the line. Let's just fucking try to get through a week without wanting to kill ourselves. But gotten way off track here. But it's a side episode, so we can do it.
Yeah. We own this
yeah.
podcast. Fuck you,
yeah.
listener.
I'll do whatever I fucking want.
Damn
I'll talk
straight.
about the way my dick hangs. No, I'm not.
We're providing you content for free. Although, if you want to give us money, we will accept it.
Money or nudes?
Yeah. As long as you're 18, please provide your ID.
Yeah, please, a picture of breasts and then a valid ID in the state or country. This is awful. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, this show, Big Mouth, sort of, it picks up to like its good stride very quickly. But yeah, so like I said, to reiterate, it's about like the trials and tribulations these kids have growing up. The biggest part overall, I would say, is the challenges of puberty. And they do a phenomenal job of capturing what that was like. So
that's really cool. And unbelievably hard to do.
Yes, and so a couple characters I didn't mention. The also main characters are Maurice and Connie, and they are the Hormone Monster and Hormone Monstress, and they represent hormones to these kids. So to start, Andrew is followed around by Maurice, the Hormone Monster, who has a very raspy voice, like he smokes a carton of Marlboros a day, and his whole goal is to get Andrew to jerk off as much as humanly possible, and to try and get him laid, and it's like, looking at it, if you just watch like the season 1 trailer, it looks dumb as hell, and this is what turned me off. I'm just like, oh my god, okay, it's gonna be like a goof off monster, like telling him to jerk off, and great. It's done so perfectly. Like,
I'm intrigued. I'm so intrigued.
It's done so, like, everything about it makes sense. And, like, especially being a dude, and the fact that sort of Andrew is one of the two main characters, and Maurice is his hormone monster. Like, when you're a younger man, at least, for those of you who didn't experience that, it's dealing with your hormones never stopping is a huge problem. And I can only speak for growing up male. I don't know the other... And we'll get beyond that in a second here, but like I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, and I'm sure after Isaac watches this, he will agree that the depiction of puberty in Big Mouth is the closest a human being has ever gotten to getting it right. That wasn't a doctor telling you how it works. It's the BoJack
intriguing.
Horseman of puberty.
Wow,
it's exact down to the side. It's crazy.
I personally, my worst experience with puberty is my mom driving me to school in high school, to good old Governor Mifflin, where we both went. And because Pennsylvania has too many fucking potholes, the car ride would be bumpy enough to give me a giant erection. So my mom would drop me off and be like, "Have a nice day at school, darling. I love you." And I'd be stepping out of the car with a giant, throbbing, fucking hard dick and walking past all of my classmates, all of the teenage girls I was attracted to, with my erection tucked up into my jeans, pretending it wasn't there.
Yes, we've all been in that same sort of scenario with tucked into the jeans. Like, that is... yeah, and this show, like... Because, it'll go from episode to episode with just different stuff, and like so one of the big, especially in season 1, and this is kind of a spoiler, but kind of not. So I wouldn't really worry about it too much yet. Sort of one of the big storylines in the first season is that Nick is a late bloomer. He has not hit puberty yet when the show starts, whereas pretty much everybody else has. And it's a big source of doubt for him because he doesn't have a hormone monster. like Andrew does, and eventually by the end of, I think, episode 2, Jessie gets one. The main female lead gets one too. Connie is played by Maya Rudolph. Connie is the best goddamn part of this show. It's so fucking good. And apparently, I didn't really know this before because I hadn't really looked things up about this show other than just watching it a couple of times. But apparently, the depictions of female puberty and how girls go through puberty are very highly praised in this show.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, like the second episode, the plot is Jessie gets her period in white shorts on a trip to the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, boy.
Which apparently Nick Kroll and Andrew Goldberg, two of the creators, that happened to a friend of theirs in school. And yeah, they get like, and it eventually, this is a bit of a spoiler, but eventually, as she's dealing with this issue, to sort of show what how this show works. Eventually, the Statue of Liberty, the world's tallest woman, starts talking to her in a mock French accent, telling her what it's like to be a woman and how it's the worst.
Okay.
And it's very clever. And on the bus ride home, and this is a bit of a spoiler, but again, on the bus ride home, you know that song, Everybody Hurts?
Yeah.
I forget who sings it.
Oh, man, what is it? It's driving me nuts.
Well, whoever that guy is, it's him as a tampon walking through the bus to the, like, if you watch the video for that song, it's basically to recreate that more or less, but it's that guy as a tampon singing Everybody Bleeds.
Oh, and it's REM. I remember.
REM, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. It's the main guy from REM.
Everybody bleeds.
Yeah.
That's great.
And
oh, man.
There's a lot of music in the show too, and it's all stuff they've done themselves, and like occasionally they'll use a real song for the ending theme, and oftentimes it's very, very good. But yeah, like it follows the antics of these kids, and we go through like their different stages of puberty and the different things that happen to them, and it just touches on how much it sucks to grow up. And to make it slightly real, we've all had differing experiences growing up.
For sure.
We've talked about a few of ours, sometimes in great depth and sometimes not. But like, the show gets it perfectly. And
that's
like,
really
even
cool.
the things I didn't experience, especially like going through puberty as a woman, for example.
Of course,
nothing even close to anything I would know about. And they even do a good job of like, the boys are talking like, what would you do if blood started coming out of your dick? I don't know. Kill myself? What are you do? Like, I don't know. Like, find a wood chipper and fling myself into it. Like, you know. So it gets it right. And like, there's a storyline about divorce. One character's parents get divorced.
Okay.
And we go through that. And it's long and painful. And it's very like, for those of us who experience that, it's very reminiscent of it. And, you know, there's a lot of lessons to it, and it's not always happy, and frequently it's very unhappy, because I think this might be the last episode of season 1, and it's not really a spoiler, but one of the songs they sing, and this is just not based off anything, it's just a song they sing. It's basically the entire cast sings this song at a bat mitzvah, that just goes, life is a fucked up mess. Life is a fucked up mess. And it's talking about love dying and how, like, everything that's basically all the characters get a little stands about everything that's going wrong with them. And it's phenomenal. Like, I don't even want to go into too many specifics as it captures so much. And the Hormone Monsters are way more fun than they look on the trailer because, again, I can't stick with enough with how dumb and, like... there's another show on Netflix, and again, I'm probably gonna watch this in a year and think it's great. It's called Paradise PD. That every time I see the trailer for, I'm like, that looks like garbage. And I had the same thoughts about that I did about Big Mouth when I first sort of found it, and I'm just shocked at how great it is, and how like as the seasons go on, these characters, these kids evolve and become better or far worse. And like how their lives change and the different like the struggles they deal with sex and relationships and puberty and all of that, and it's really good. And just so that's basically my pitch. Just a couple other side things that I really like. One of the main characters, like the main adult character, is Coach Steve, who is I don't know how to describe. Coach Steve is Coach Steve, and Coach Steve is very fun. And he's incompetent and overly talkative, and he's like, he just wants people to be his friend, and it works in the best way. I think overall my favorite character is the ghost of Duke Ellington, who lives in Nick's attic. And yeah, also too, it's like it's great and because like the ghost of Duke Ellington is, and he's voiced by Jordan Peele, by the way.
Oh, sweet.
There's a lot. I'll briefly, before I wrap up, I'll briefly touch on some of the people who voice in this. And he's like not a main character. He does get an episode to basically not to himself, but like he gets an episode where he drives the entire narrative, and he's in, I think, most episodes. He's sort of like the I'm trying to think of a good example, like the neighbor in Home Improvement. Where Wilson, where he's not part of the main cast, but Wilson's in every episode.
Yeah,
it's sort of the same thing.
Important.
Like Duke Ellington, he's always there.
Okay.
And yeah, it's also just like the ghost. It's not like a big reveal. Like Nick just goes upstairs in episode 1. He's like, "Oh, hey, Duke," and it's like, it's the ghost of Duke Ellington. And the ghost of Duke Ellington is the goddamn best. And I fucking love every scene he's in.
Oh man.
And including a song in season 1 where he's playing the piano and singing all about furry triangles, and Nick is humming it in school later, and it's great. Duke Ellington's the fucking absolute best.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, and the episode about him growing up is fantastic. Yeah, and the ghost this is a spoiler, but not really, because it's just a gag. The ghost in Duke Ellington's attic was the ghost of Harriet Tubman, which somehow was even funnier.
There's a through line. I like that.
Yeah. And my favorite episode is one that it's like entirely set in the future, but it's like it's one of those like, this is a future that could happen sort of thing. It's like a kind of a Marvel what if comic. And this is like season 3 or 4. And it's just like how perfectly they nail it is incredible. Like how they get it. Like it's about Nick and just about his state of mind at the time and how they've been, because they show a lot of times, like, you know, they'll do sort of the Family Guy gag with cutaways, not very often. And when they do, it's always like meaningful. It's not just like, you know, here's Darth Vader ordering a Chick-fil-A. It's like they'll cut away to like what the future might be like, or you know what would happen if my parents were dead. I'm totally making that up. I'm just pulling something out of my brain. Like, and they nail that one so perfectly. And the theme song to the show is "Changes," which is a song originally by Black Sabbath. I believe it's originally by Black Sabbath. They may have been covering it for all. Every song's a cover of a cover of a cover now.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's just sort of like every movie's a remake of a remake of a remake. But so it's this very soulful remake is the theme song of "Changes" by Black Sabbath. And in this Future Forward episode, it's the original Black Sabbath "Changes," which if you've never heard it, is like the most melancholy fucking song I've ever heard. I've always liked. I knew about it before this show, and it's just like that. Just starting with that, and then the whole episode, which is like all this stuff coming together. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. And yeah, it's just a really excellent show that nails growing up perfectly, and is really funny and like entertaining to watch. And all of a sudden, you'll realize you've watched 2.5 seasons and didn't realize it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I did not realize at all, because I'd heard you talk about it before, but I had no idea it was, at its essence, about puberty. Which is cool, and like, you know, as an adult, everyone's been through puberty, and has dealt with a lot of relatable shit, and a lot of unique shit that's very completely unto yourself, that no one else has gone through. But at the same time, you can relate to someone else, or another story about puberty. You'd be like, oh man, the specific situation I went through, like, oh, I can completely relate to this character, or this person, or this story. And that's that's cool. That's a great feeling to like come through an experience like puberty and be on the other side and be like, oh yeah, been there, done that.
Mm-hmm. And it does, even though like the show is very bleak in a lot of ways, but it doesn't really, it's not bleak in the sense of like Breaking Bad is bleak, which if you've never seen it, it's just bleak on top of bleak on top of bleak, and then at the end the show's over and you're like, fuck.
There's an awful lot of sadness, and there's not a lot of redemption.
It's bleak, but like they find ways, and it's not always the end of a season. It's not always the middle of a season. It just it's like when the story demands it, they find ways to make it like, this was bleak, this was a sucky experience, but like I've grown from it.
Right. Okay.
And they find a way to make that part of the narrative that works, and they, it blends in nicely. Because, nobody's ever having the best time, but a lot of times, and it shows people working through their problems, which is nice. Which,
for sure,
that I think, to go back to BoJack, the main overarching plot of BoJack Horseman, I would say, is his addiction. I would like him working through his addiction.
Yeah.
Because this show is about kids going through puberty. You have your first period, and then you have your second period, and it just goes on and on. Like, it's different. So that's just one example, and probably not the one I should have used, but like they take, it has parts of, okay, this is a bit of a spoiler. So if you don't want spoilers, skip ahead about a minute. And Isaac, I will keep it still as vague as I can, so I'm not ruining for you. The second season revolves around shame. And like the first season is a little more loose and disconnected, with everybody sort of has their own thing going on. That's still, they're friends and they interact, and some of them date. But the second season is about shame, and a character called the Shame Wizard, who is also one of my favorite characters. And he, like, everybody deals with the Shame Wizard, and everybody deals with shame, and like that's the whole theme of the season. And the other two seasons, like after that, season 1 not as much have a theme, but season 2, 3, and 4 definitely have themes, and it's things that you and I specifically struggle with a lot.
Oh. Interesting.
And I'm really excited, if you watch this, to talk about it with you after you're done, because I think it's things we connect on in a lot of ways, and that's why it touched me so much, because I'm a neurotic mess pretty much every second of every day of my life, and it's really really not
feeling.
Fun. It's really not fun to be inside my brain.
Yeah.
I'm not a very happy person overall, believe it or not. So like so there's that. But anyway, so that's my pitch to you about this. I just want to throw some of the voice actors at you. Nick Kroll is the majority of like the main character voices. John Mulaney, if you're familiar with him.
Oh yeah.
Very funny comedian.
His stand-up's great.
He's the voice of Andrew.
Nice.
Jesse Klein is the voice of Jessie. I don't really know her, but I think I looked up the actress, and she's with some stuff that I haven't seen, but she's a good actress for that. And Jason Mantzoukas is Jay, who's the jerk-off, cum-obsessed one.
Okay. Don't know him by name either.
Jay fucks his pillows, and eventually one of them gets pregnant.
I approve.
Jenny Slate voices Missy. And that's another thing I want to mention, too. The show does a good job with representation.
That's good.
It sort of touches on everything. And the one problem people had with it was that Jenny Slate, she is a SNL alum, she is in Parks and Rec. She is John Ralphio's sister, which John Ralphio is quite far the greatest thing to happen to fucking television in the history of man.
It's pretty adorable, yes.
So Jenny Slate played Missy, who is a black character. And then at the end of season 4, plot happens, and now she's voiced by a black woman. Io Edibury. I'm so sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this, but I'm not familiar with her, any of her work. So, but it was interesting. They find a way to do it that makes sense, and it sort of it helps, because that was like the people's biggest complaint with the representation not working.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. That's a thorny issue, where you have people of different races portraying different races.
Right. Well, I believe it was actually the voice actress Jenny Slate. I believe it was her. She initiated it, saying like, "I don't want to keep doing this. I'd rather this character be voiced by."
That's cool.
It
came from her. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, I don't think she didn't get fired. She was either. That's good. If she didn't initiate it, she was very much in support of it.
For sure.
But yeah, that's an issue I'm not equipped to tackle.
Yeah, especially
not today.
One. That's a thorny one.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, Maya Rudolph, who voices, among other characters, she voices Connie, and one of my other favorite characters that gets just a couple of gags, but they're all great, is Jay's bath mat that he fucks.
Oh God.
Which talks to him. And like I said, Jordan Peele is the ghost of Duke Ellington.
Nice.
Just some other characters some other voice actors. I know John Hamm at one point plays a plate of scallops.
That sounds about right.
Kat Dennings plays Nick's sister, she is in Two Broke Girls, I believe. Is that what she's from? I want to say.
I don't know offhand, but that sounds right.
Kristen Bell, she makes a couple appearances. Natasha Lyonne, I might be pronouncing that wrong.
Don't know her.
She was Orange Is the New Black. She was Nikki.
Okay.
And she's in what the fuck is the other show? Because they reference it directly. The other Netflix show, Russian Doll.
Okay.
She's in the main character in Russian Doll, which is another very good show. Kristen Wiig, Zachary Quinto, Ali Wong, Zach Galifianakis, Seth Rogen.
Oh, damn.
And these people, like a lot of those characters are just, in a couple of episodes,
yeah.
or there's a couple of one-offs. And
but still, that's
Kristen Wiig plays somebody's vagina, for example. So she's not in every episode, but every time they talk to her vagina, which again, I realize the words coming out of my mouth. Yes, the show's pretty insane.
I'm very intrigued. You've won your pitch. I'm going to be watching this within the next few weeks.
You especially will definitely love it. And like I said, it's a lot of things that hit you and I, especially where we live.
It sounds like it'll be up my wife's alley too. So I think we could.
I really think you'll both very much enjoy it. Yeah,
very cool. I'm excited.
It's kind of it's a lot to swallow at first because it's sort of, I don't know. For me, it took a little bit of a hump to get over to get into it the first time. But I was also just being told I had to watch it so I would stop getting bitched about watching it by a friend of mine.
Yeah. We definitely had that experience with BoJack where the first half of the first season didn't completely win us over, but by the end of the first season, we were like totally invested. So I was
sunk forever. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have that we've been primed for that sort of thing. So I think we'll be able to get through it. But yeah, I'm very excited to watch it now.
Well, good. I'm glad. I went way longer than I thought it would, so great.
Oh, well, it's all good.
I tend to ramble. This is why I take notes to keep things on track.
So, Larry covered Big Mouth. I'm covering Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is is not animated, is a live-action single-camera sitcom. Very much in the vein of The Office / Parks and Rec. We'll get a little more.
And a show that I have seen like maybe 5 minutes of clips from and never a single episode.
There's a lot of memes about this one, specifically with Terry Crews, but we'll get into that.
Really all I know about it is that Terry Crews is in
it. It's really good, and I didn't realize how beloved it was, by critics and audience. We'll get into some of the ratings, but like I knew it was an internet thing for a while, and then I finally started watching it about a year ago, and I loved it, and my wife loved it. We thought it was great, but I was blown away by the reviews of this.
Huh.
So, it premiered in 2013, and it ran for 5 seasons on Fox, and then Fox canceled the show abruptly, and then the very next day, NBC immediately picked it up. And has run it for 3 more seasons, and the 8th and final season is set to premiere later this year.
It's still fall. Running? I thought it was done
a
couple years ago. Shit.
Nope. Yeah, you probably heard about the Fox cancellation. But NBC picked it up, and they did a 6th and 7th season, and season 8 comes out this fall.
I'll be damned.
So, Rotten Tomato critic score right now is 95%.
Wow.
That's
really
crazy.
For Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I'm shocked. I would have expected. I know people like it, and I've heard it's good. I haven't heard anything specific, but I would have expected 88.
I know. If it was in the 80s or even 70s, I wouldn't have been shocked. I know it's good and it's quality, and generally critics liked it, but 95% is crazy.
Huh.
Crazy high. Rotten Tomato audience is 94%, and IMDb is 8.4.
Huh.
So it's high up there with every metric of audience score.
That's yeah. I did not realize it was that beloved. That's
I know.
Wild.
I would not have guessed it at all.
Huh.
So the show overall follows several detectives in Brooklyn's 99th precinct, which is a fictional precinct. They don't have that many precincts, but whatever. The opening arc of the show,
wouldn't shock me.
Season 1, involves the arrival of a new captain for the precinct, Captain Holt, and his immediate clash with Jake Peralta, who's essentially the lead character of more or less an ensemble show. Seinfeld, like, yeah, it's an ensemble show. It's the four main characters, but Jerry's kind of the lead, pretty much. It's sort of the same with Jake. Andy Samberg is more or less the lead, but there's still a set of main characters kind of around him. So yeah, Andy Samberg, who's famous from, he's an SNL alum. He did Lonely Island, which is a lot of YouTube comedy videos, music videos that were popular, 10 years ago, give or take.
Yeah, that's what I know the name from.
He plays Jake Peralta, essentially the lead character. He's an extremely good detective, but is also the class clown. He very rarely takes anything seriously, and is a constant stream of jocularity and witticisms. But when he does get serious, he shows off his amazing talent as a detective. And, several times in each season, they just get, in the nitty-gritty of him solving a crime. And, him puzzling it out, and it's, a Sherlock moment where you're like, oh, shit, you're not just a goofball. You're actually, an impressive detective, and, I can follow this line of logic, and, holy shit. Damn, that's impressive.
All right, that's interesting.
But yeah, his comedy, and he's great at just being a goofball and wisecracking and, extremely immature humor, which plays off other characters, as we'll see.
He strikes me as a guy with very good timing.
Yes. Oh, yes. Unbelievable timing. And that plays into his ability with not being taken very seriously and being a goofball comic. It works really well. And he plays... And that's one of the things with this show, similar to Office, similar to Parks and Rec, we'll get into more of that later, but where everyone plays off each other perfectly. And it's just that inner balance of the cast that is what really makes the show, sing.
Yeah, that's what really, an ensemble comedy really... The cast is what does it.
Yeah, you can have everyone to be on point.
You can have a subpar episode that can be just brought up so much by, everybody being together so well.
Exactly. And, there's really no bad episode of Seinfeld. There's definitely some that are a little less... They're a little more lackluster. The story's not quite as great.
Right.
But just watching the ensemble of four interact is titillating and amusing and hilarious.
It's the same thing with Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I think is the evolution of Seinfeld. There's no bad episode. There's one episode I don't like, but I see why other people like it. It's just not my favorite.
Yeah. But even if it's the episode, the story falls flat, the acting and the interactions pick it up.
It's just there's certain groups of people you can watch do stuff together, and I'm always down for this.
Very much. And that's this show written large.
Interesting.
So we also have Stephanie Beatriz, who's the actress who plays Rosa Diaz. She's an extremely tough Latina detective who's known for her icy demeanor and leather jacket. Despite her hard exterior, she shows great loyalty and friendship to her coworkers time and again. And also, interestingly, later in the series, Rosa comes out as not a lesbian, a bisexual. Okay. And she struggles with her parents accepting her sexuality. And I think her dad might be played by Danny Trejo, actually. I'm trying to remember.
I love Danny Trejo.
I forget if it's him or not. It might be him. But at any rate, it's a cool relationship with her dad, and her dad, eventually kind of gets on board, and her mom doesn't, and just isn't accepting of it. But it's a great portrayal of, how hard it is to come out with having, a non-typical sexuality, and especially with older parents dealing with that and having them accept you or not accept you, and then where do you go from that? Which is something I've never experienced and I can't even fathom experiencing. I love my mom very much, and if there was something inherent about me that she rejected, I can't imagine what that would do to me.
Someone very close to me just came out as trans last week, and before I started recording said, I'm going to go talk to my parents about this right now. So yeah, that's I just encountered, I fucking had the same set of thoughts that you just did. I don't know what I would do if I was just rejected by these people I loved for being who I am, I can't imagine
again,
what
my mom, I'm sure if I would ever come out as gay or trans or anything in the LGBT spectrum, my mom would be great with it. Right. But just imagining if she wasn't, like how crushing that would be.
Yeah, same sort of thing. Crazy. My living family would all be fine with it, but like, I can't fathom a world where like that wouldn't be the case.
I know. So it's just so heartbreaking that so many people have to go through with that. And the show, and again, it's, first and foremost a comedy. Every once in a while it gets serious. Again, kind of like The Office, kind of like Parks and Rec, where 90% of the time we're here for the yucks, but every once in a while you're like, oh my God, I want to cry. Oh.
Man, and you know what? I would not have. I'm like sitting here surprised that it gets that deep. I don't know why, because like you said, I've watched Parks and Rec like 3 times. I love it, and it's not something about Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I look at it, it's just like, oh, that's just it's all silly all the time. But
no, it's got depth. It has plenty of depth.
I don't know why my brain automatically categorizes things. You'd think I'd know better by now, not to judge a book by its cover.
So Terry Crews plays Terry Jeffords. He's the muscle-bound lieutenant tough guy.
Jeffords is a fantastic name.
It really is. But he is also a huge family man, and there's a lot of hilarity that comes from like his rugged masculinity clashing with his like love and attentiveness to his 2 very girly young daughters, because they'll be like building them like playhouses or dressing up like in a little pink dress or being the tooth fairy. I forget all the shit that happens, but like he's this giant, fierce, ripped black man.
Yeah,
and then he'll be like doing these tiny little girl things, and it's adorable and a great characterization, and like that clash is always funny.
That is a great, like, Terry Crews is great for that because he's like, it seems less generic because he's not like, he's so goofy already for being a big dude like that. He's been on a couple movies. He was in White Chicks, and that we've done for the show. He was in something else, one of yours, I believe. I
don't remember. Yeah, I know he hooks up with the Waynes occasionally.
Yeah. But yeah, like he was in the Old Spice commercials that were pretty fucking out there.
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah. And he has a weird internet persona.
Yeah, like he seems like a cool dude, and it's not just like it's believable and like less, I don't know, somehow less generic that it's him doing it, because he's like carved out such a niche for himself as like huge guy with big imposing voice who's also like such a goofball to the extent of it's like on a different level of goofball.
Yeah, and he plays an interesting role in the show too, where he's a lieutenant, so he's like a step above the rest of the cast, like in seniority, but he's not the leader. We'll get to the leader later. But he's also kind of been with everyone for longer, so he kind of has a leadership role.
Okay.
And they do some interesting stuff, and there's some stuff with him where he had an issue with discharging his gun. Like, I think I forget the detail, but like he might have shot somebody he shouldn't have shot, and then there's a whole arc like over the course of a season or two where he's like working back up to being able to carry a gun like in the field again.
That's surprisingly deep.
Yeah, and they take that fairly seriously, and there's comedy in and around it, but
sure.
But yeah, it's interesting, and they don't shy away from that stuff necessarily, and maybe
that's pretty deep for like a fairly goofy show like that. Like again, Parks and Rec. I can't really. I have a complicated history with The Office. Parks and Rec, like they don't get that deep usually. Like it can be emotional and dramatic, but that's fucking hardcore to like.
Yeah, I think Brooklyn Nine-Nine gets a little like digs a little deeper with some of that stuff, and especially the LGBTQ stuff. Because
really
I don't think there's no one in Parks and Rec who's LGBTQ, is there? I don't think.
Not one of the main cast, because memory's not going to memory. I'm sure somebody in the side cast probably was, but
okay. And then we have Melissa Fumero, who plays Amy Santiago. She's a binder-loving, detail-obsessed nerd of The Office. She's extremely serious and ambitious, and often clashes with Jake, who's the class clown. Very quickly, will they, won't they develops between her and Jake, and like yeah, you know how it's gonna play out. So like spoilers, yeah, it's they get together. They get together.
Jim and Pam, you gotta get the people. You gotta get eyes, butts, and seats. That's what the average American wants.
And then Joe, how do you pronounce this man's name? Joe Lo Trujillo. That's the weirdest name.
The fuck did you just call me?
Joe Lo Trujillo. He plays Charles Boyle, who's the comic foil and loser of the detective bunch. He's best friends with Jake. He's a complete dork and a foodie. He's obsessed with food and like goes down rabbit holes of like, oh, this flambéed quiche with lobster in it and whatever.
All right.
And often his romantic entanglements are fraught with disaster/comedy. And he's just a quirky goofball loser and has the most laugh-out-loud moments of anybody, where he'll just out of nowhere do something that's ridiculous and, like, I'm just crying with laughter. Like, definitely the most laughs come from him. I mean, Andy Samberg as Jake Peralta has the most, like, yucks, but Charles Boyle is absolutely the funniest character. It's amazing.
All right.
Chelsea Peretti plays Gina Linetti through...
Oh, that's a name I know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else she's done.
Wait, Chelsea Peretti plays Gina... What? Does it
Gina
rhyme?
Linetti. I know. I feel like they did it on purpose.
Probably.
So for seasons 1 through 6, she ended up leaving the show, and it was like built into the show where she's like going to pursue a different career or whatever. But she's the teetering on the edge of sociopathic secretary. She's
fascinating.
Intensely narcissistic. She often skirts her duties in the office, but somehow is strangely essential to the functioning of the precinct. Like, everything would fall apart without her, and we kind of see that, like, in the transition. But, yeah, she's, again, like, not quite as funny as Charles Boyle with, like, the absolute laugh-out-louds, but... And I was talking with my wife earlier before we recorded this, and she really did not like this character in season 1. And it took a while for her to grow on my wife. And she eventually sort of came around and sort of liked her. But, like, she really rubbed her the wrong way in the beginning. I always thought she was hilarious. But yeah, she is kind of a bitch. And kind of like a pain in the ass and, like, a thorn in people's sides when she doesn't need to be. But it's amusing. Very amusing.
And by the way, quick side note, because I just looked her up because I knew the name from somewhere. She is a character in Big Mouth.
Oh, well, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, she's one of the more side characters, but she's in 11 episodes. And I was like, I knew that name from somewhere. But anyway.
And the last main character is portrayed by Andre Brower, who plays Captain Raymond Holt. He is deadpan serious almost constantly. He's flagrantly and unapologetically intellectual. Where he'll be, like, talking about, like, oh, I went and saw the opera last week, and just the most obnoxious intellectual piece of crap you can imagine. But it's comical, and it's great. He's been openly gay for decades as he rose through the ranks of the NYPD.
Interesting.
And he's in a interracial homosexual marriage, and has been for a while, which is, like...
Good for them.
When have you heard of that on a TV show? An interracial homosexual marriage?
You know, it's really interesting. Yeah, I'd never heard of such a thing. But, like, I remember, to go back to BoJack, one of the seasons of BoJack had, and this is not a spoiler, just as, like, one of the settings they were at, and it was, like, not really, the setting didn't really matter, but they were at a lesbian wedding, and, like, they don't talk about it at all. And I remember afterwards seeing articles that was like, wow, this is great representation because they're not talking about it at all, which I kind of feel ruins it if you then write an article talking about how they didn't talk about it. But, I mean, that's either here or there. And it just makes me think, like, it's really good to acknowledge that, the fact that, like, yeah, there's a gay interracial relationship, because to me it's like, oh, great. Like, I'm so, God, I hate to say it. I guess I'm so woke now that I'm like, oh, sure, yeah, fine. But, like, the average person, maybe that's unfair to say the average person, but, like, that's not the case for a lot of people still.
Yeah, and I think just because the show's, you know, was on Fox, it was on NBC, or still is on NBC, and just, yeah, it's going out to tens of millions of people are watching it on Thursday nights or whenever it's going on, and there's a lot of them who, yeah, homosexual interracial marriage is not common. Seems weird. Seems foreign. And just having this show help normalize that is great. Is absolutely great. And it's just like, oh, yeah, it's not a big deal. There's these two people who are in love and are living their lives together, and they're still professionals, and they have careers, and they're successful, and everything's great.
And it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and it's just fine. And that's a really cool thing with Captain Holt's sexuality, is that it's handled very matter-of-fact. And he doesn't play into any homosexual male stereotypes. Like, he doesn't do the gay voice, or he doesn't, like, go out to gay bars or anything like that. Like, he's just, like, a cold, hard, intellectual guy, and sort of same with his husband is white, but, like, they both love the opera and literature. I think his husband is a literary professor. Mm-hmm. And there's even some, like, clashes with, like, how intellectual he is versus his husband's circle.
Right.
Because he's, like, a cop and not a professor. So there's interesting nuances there. But at the same time, Captain Holt's sexuality is occasionally like a plot driving factor. Like, they'll, do flashbacks to, like, how hard it was to come up as an openly gay man, in the 90s and early 2000s in the NYPD.
Which is historically not the world's friendliest organization. I'll just leave it at that.
Definitely
taking everything else in the history of the last couple of years aside, the NYPD is not historically friendly to even themselves.
Yeah. So it's just really cool that his sexuality usually doesn't matter. It's just kind of like background, like, he has a husband, and, like, we're kind of aware he's gay, but almost never does it matter. But then occasionally, like, because society sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It rears its ugly head, and, like, oh, we have to deal with this now because other people suck. And the fact that he's gay is something we have to focus on now, even though it shouldn't.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and the show's gotten a lot of street cred from LGBTQ community for both Rosa coming out as bisexual, and especially with her relationship with her parents, and then also Captain Holt being openly gay for so long, and how that's affected his life, his career, and, again, the interracial homosexual marriage.
Yeah.
So they've gotten a lot of cred for that.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So I want to cover just a couple of reoccurring gags that are pretty great throughout the show. There's the Halloween Heist episodes. So every Halloween, there's a competition among various members of the precinct to steal a particular item. Usually it's like a crown. And throughout the years, there's an escalation of, like, double, triple, quadruple crossing between people, and various partnerships and teams form, and they're often decoys, and just like, I was actually working with this person. I was working with this person. It was
that is one of my favorite gags in anything.
Yeah,
and it's so cheesy, but it's so perfect.
I know, like it's doofy, but this is the exact place where it works. Is this kind of sitcom where it's like, 90% of the time, we're just here to make some yucks and not take anything too seriously. Every once in a while, we'll get serious. But we're here for the laughs. So it's always a delight when a Halloween Heist episode is the next in your queue.
That sounds really fun.
And another great recurring gag is Doug Judy, the Pontiac Bandit, who's played by Craig Robinson.
Oh, wait, I know that name.
He's most famous for playing Daryl from The Warehouse in The Office.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
That's right.
So
Pontiac
he starts
Bandit?
off as Jake's arch nemesis. He's a prolific car thief who always ends up evading capture. Judy features heavily in at least one episode per season, often getting captured by Jake and then somehow fashioning some convoluted way of escaping. Throughout the seasons, Jake and Judy slowly realize how much they have in common, like their immature sense of humor and love of pop culture, and the relationship, like, morphs into a weird amalgam of nemesis/friendship.
Oh, yeah.
And
I love those relationships.
It's pretty great.
That sounds awesome.
And one of the best running gags specifically is Jake and more or less other people, but usually Jake, taking a comment someone has said, and it's kind of like That's What She Said, like that old gag, but it's like, that's the title of your sex tape. So someone will say something, and that's the title of your sex tape. Some of the best ones, kind, sober, and fully dressed. Title of your sex tape. It's not your fault, I was terrible. Title of your sex tape. I'm horrible at this. When can we stop? Title of your sex tape.
Oh, that's awesome.
Why doesn't your mouth work? Title of your sex tape. A blast of cold air coming out of that box. Title of your sex tape.
That's so stupid and amazing.
And there's dozens and dozens more.
Man.
It's wonderful. And that's become a gag with me and the missus, where one of us will say something that could be a sex tape title, and then we'll catch each other on it.
That's incredible.
So the other running gag, not even gag necessarily, but like overall arching part of the show is the relationship between Jake and Amy. So early on, they're very clearly rivals and have divergent personalities. Jake is fun-loving. He's not detail-oriented at all.
This is Chelsea Peretti?
No. It's... What's her face?
This is the binder-loving one.
Binder-loving one.
Yes,
Melissa
that's right. Okay.
Fumero plays Amy Santiago.
Got it.
She's the other detective. So they kind of compete, and I think, there's different episodes where they'll compete to how many cases they can close, by a certain deadline or something. Amy is the binder-loving detail freak who's often presented with a stiff upper lip and a lack of capacity for fun. Their will they, won't they saga plays out over the course of several seasons, and has many moments of comedy and some moments of seriousness that hit very effectively. Like, there's definitely some, on the verge of tear-jerking moments. So overall, it's probably not quite the caliber of love story that Jim and Pam from The Office have, but it's... You might like this one better, maybe. I like Jim and Pam, but anyway.
I just was over it so quickly. I still have not finished The Office, and I don't know that I ever will.
I'm curious if you'll like this love story better, because for me personally, it's not quite the same as Jim and Pam, but it's still funny, it's emotional, it's engaging. It plays out over seasons. Surprise, surprise, they get together. Wiggity, wiggity.
I mean, any moron in the world could have guessed that.
Yeah. So, spoiler alert, fuck you. But I don't know.
Spoiler alert, welcome to human storytelling.
Yeah. And overall, if some of the tone and characterization strikes you as familiar from the show, you're not off base at all. Because the show was created by Michael Schur and Dan Gore. God,
Michael Schur, I know that. Weird. Michael Schur sounds familiar.
They collaborated on the sitcom Parks and Rec.
No shit.
Yep. So that's the reason. Yep. There's a lot of parallels. So Amy draws a lot of parallels to Leslie Knope with the binders and being a nerd.
Yeah.
Captain Holt, while gay, has the unflinching seriousness and deadpan of Ron.
I was going to compare him to Ron in one of my examples too. Yeah. Huh.
Yep. And I didn't really get into them too much because they're a little more ancillary, but in Parks and Recs, the old fat guy, comic foil Jerry.
Jerry, yeah.
Yep. He has a reflected personality because there's two old and fat cops who are like pencil pushers and desk bound and just obsessed with taking naps and eating food and are comic foils.
How about
that? A lot of parallels can be drawn, and you could get a little more into it if you wanted to. It's not hard as a viewer to accept the two shows as unique characters.
Right.
You can draw those lines, but at the same time, Captain Holt is different from Juan. Amy is different from Leslie. The fat guys are kind of the fat guys, but they're just there to be fat guys, so fuck it. It doesn't really matter.
Right?
The characters you care about are unique enough.
Yeah, I don't. The guy's comparison to the captain's comparison to Ron is the closest one to me that sounds like I could draw a line from A to B in my head between those two, just based on your description, obviously.
And at the same time, they're still very different.
Yeah, Ron
cool.
was right. Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think Parks and Rec is. Here's a controversial opinion, and I'll never get a date again if I ever need a date again. Parks and Rec is much better than The Office. It's just The Office done correctly, in my opinion. And it's a really great ensemble show. I think that really, they nailed it with that. Like, that's again, it's funny too, to draw back to what we were talking about with Big Mouth a little bit, is the first season of Parks and Rec was just trying to be The Office, and then once they spread their wings, it really took off.
Yeah, and like there's a lot I like about The Office better than Parks and Rec, but at the same time, Parks and Rec makes me feel better. It's a more feel good show. It works better. Everyone jives better.
Yeah,
it makes me happier when I'm watching it, less cringy when I watch it.
And the cast is smaller. Helps
that
a
helps
lot.
Too. That helps.
You really can focus on like the 7 or 8 people in that. Yeah, so that's really interesting that it's the same character, because I think Parks and Rec is fantastic.
Yeah,
and if it's those same guys at the helm, then yeah, for sure. Wow.
Definitely need to watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, because if you like Parks and Rec, and if you like The Office, you will like this.
This is really eye-opening, because like it's probably Brooklyn Nine-Nine has been one of those shows that was like, I'll get to it one day maybe, but like this is really, I'm way more interested in it now.
Oh yeah, it's. I would say I like Parks and Rec better, but this is probably like, I think Parks and Rec is probably a 9, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Office are both 8s for me. Like, they're very solid, but Parks and Rec just hits home better for, I don't know why. I can't explain it.
They nailed it. Again, like, I think it takes even till season 3 when it really starts to pick up. Season 2 is okay. Season 1's a little rough. But it once they decided they weren't going to be The Office 2, they really they knock it out of the park with that show. Like, as far as, TV family sitcoms go, sort of, like, what you would watch the 7 p.m. after Jeopardy slot, I would say, I guess. I don't know.
Definitely. And and Parks and Rec, I think, is my favorite, but Brooklyn Nine-Nine's right up there, and definitely worth watching if you like either Parks and Rec or The Office. This is up your alley, and different enough. And it being set in a police station, like, helps. Just, the vibe is different just because of that.
Yeah, with the little bit of knowledge I had about it before, I never would have thought to even like compare the two like that. Like, I don't know what it existed as in my head, but like without knowing anything about it, I would have thought it was more like a Comedy Central type show than like a mainstream Parks and Rec or Office type show. That's very interesting.
Yeah. It's worth checking out. So
I'm gonna be now for sure, because I just finished up. What was I watching? Kim's Convenience was a show that I watched all of, and literally the day I finished it's still running. The day I finished the last season on Netflix, they canceled it, because that is how God decides to take away the things that I like.
That's how it goes. My wife was crushed when Dark Crystal got canceled.
Oh, did they cancel that? I haven't watched any of it.
Yeah. The one season that was out was pretty great.
Never even seen the movie.
Yeah.
One of those things I need to.
The season's worth watching. She made me sit down and watch it, and like Jim Henson puppets in a fucking serious fantasy. Like, I was like, I'm not going to like this, but it's really good.
You know how I feel about puppets.
You will love it. You will jizz all over the puppets.
Don't make it weird.
You made it weird.
Yeah. So, and I finished that, and I just finished WandaVision, which.
Oh, I haven't seen that. There's so many memes. So many memes.
Are there really?
I don't know. I just see shit about it on Reddit all the time.
I don't know. I really hated the first 3 episodes, and after that, it picks up.
I'm curious. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's Marvel. It's once you get over how weird the fucking beginning is, it's a Marvel show. It's basically a very long Marvel movie. It just happens to star 2 of my least favorite Marvel characters, except for the other show, which stars my actual 2 least favorite Marvel characters: the Falcon and Captain and fucking Winter Soldier. Guy with gun and wings. Great, thanks. Awesome.
Am I broken somehow because I think Elizabeth Olsen's face looks weird?
No.
Because, like, I see all these posts, like, she's the most attractive person in the world, and she's like, oh, she's hotter than Margot Robbie and all this shit like that. And I'm like, nah, her face is off. Like, it's off.
I don't know. I don't really... This is not me even trying to avoid something. I just don't I don't really look at people and rate their attraction. Like, a person either is super attractive to me or they just are human. Like, I'm really broken. And to me, she's just human. Like, I don't see shades of gray. For me, it's either like, wah wah wee wah, or just, oh, that's a human being. I recognize that that's not a giraffe.
Yeah, no, that's fair. For me, it's like either, I want to shoot ropes all over that face or not.
I never tell me where I fall on the spectrum. Never, ever, ever, ever tell me. Don't. You're thinking about doing it right now. Don't do it. Just leave it a mystery.
I don't want to shoot ropes on your face.
I wanted it to be a mystery. I was hoping it was no, but I wanted to believe
it was obvious.
Yes.
I am a straight man.
Well.
Well, that was a bonus adventure in the colon, all right?
Yeah, it was fun. I'm 100% going to look for that now because I needed something to watch, so I might as well go find where I can find it.
Yeah. It's oh fuck yeah. Is it on Hulu? I don't remember.
I think I used to see it on Hulu. I don't have Hulu currently, but I think
it's probably Hulu because it's still like an active NBC show.
Yeah. And I don't know if I mentioned Big Mouth is a Netflix original.
Netflix original, right? Okay, cool. So
and
I can start watching that.
Since you mentioned the Rotten Tomatoes, because I didn't do that for mine. Season 1, 100%. Season 2, 100%. Season 3, 97%. Season 4, 100%.
Damn.
The audience score is 77, but I bet a lot of that is faux outrage. Because it is children, basically fucking each other.
We picked some winners for sure.
We did,
for sure.
Yeah.
And it was very exciting to talk about things we like for a change.
I know. This is a fun change. I don't think we could make a show out of it every week, but it's nice to mix it up.
Yeah, I think we should definitely dabble in this a little more often.
Yeah,
and I know we were talking about like making a website and writing articles and stuff, and like especially typing up shit for this. I was like, got my juices flowing. I think that could be in our future.
That's something that we have been kind of batting some ideas around of more stuff we want to do. Obviously, we can't even get a fucking regular episode off the ground. Well, in this case, me. I can't get a regular episode off the ground right now, so I'm a little grounded at this second. But this summer, we have some ideas we want to start implementing and making hay while the sun's shining out of this.
Yeah. We've been struggling with mental health issues, seasonal affective disorder, pandemic blues.
Oh god!
But hopefully, as everything starts warming up, we get vaccinated, life goes back to normal. Yeah, I think we got some gas in the tank.
Yeah, we have a couple exciting ideas just ruminating around, and I think it's going to be some good stuff. I think you're going to enjoy it. If you like hearing us talk, I think you're going to enjoy what's coming down the line.
Stay tuned, and we will keep you posted.
Yeah,
because it's going to be fun.
Next week, we'll return you to your regularly scheduled program. Thank you for indulging basically a week off of hard work for me, because I can talk about things I like all day.
We still ended up talking for an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, I know. Hey, you know what, though? I didn't have to take 4 hours to review a thing that I don't like.
Yeah, that's true.
But just a bit of a heads up for next week. It's not that bad. So I hope
Larry,
if you were looking forward to another, because we were talking before we started recording today about how our last 2 regular episodes knocked it out of the park. Really, those are Scales Mermaids Are Real and whatever the fucking Guest House. Really, those were 2 of our better episodes. I think we're in agreement. Larry
somehow enjoyed the Australian 2004 sitcom about teenage mermaids.
No. Let me amend that. Not enjoyed. I just it exists. It's not bad. I didn't like it. It's not for me. Spookly wasn't for me either, but Spookly could have been great. It's not. It's terrible.
It's like well-prepared green beans. You're like, I don't like green beans, but at least these are slathered in butter.
Yeah, honestly, yes. That's pretty much it, exactly. Yeah, there's the review for H2O Mermaids Are Real. I don't know.
Okay,
exactly.
Great. So next week we'll handle my fucking dragon bullshit or whatever.
What's the name of your Seventh Son is what you're watching?
Yeah, I don't even know. I'll have to go back to the episode and listen. Is it Seventh Son? I can make a note.
I believe it's called Seventh Son.
Oh,
I know one of our super fans is very excited because apparently it's one of the worst movies he's ever seen. So we had an email we'll be reading on your episode. That's exciting.
Oh yes, indeed.
So
all right, well, stay tuned, Bowsers. We love you. We're glad you could deal with a little bit of a switcheroo this week. But yeah, we'll be back to your regular scheduled programming next week.
Yes, thank you as always for joining us. We love you.
Yeah, we really do. We didn't really say, but do the Facebook, do the Twitter, do the email, BowsNetflixGmail.com.
We do want you to do that, but if we're taking a week off, you take a week off too. You don't have to. You can. Your grandmother can get her medication this week.
If you give it to her once, she's just gonna whine to get it next week.
Well, then she's gonna be even more desperate. The first taste is always free.
Medicate your grandmother as you see fit. But
but
overall,
next week it's right back to taking that shit back.
Overall, your focus should be on this show, more so than your grandmother.
God, we love you. Thanks for listening.
Smell you later.